April 6th edition of the Courier Paperboyz. I'm sports editor Doug Newhoff, and we've got our opening day lineup of Jim Sullivan, Jim Nelson, and Nick Patero's here this morning. A few things to talk about, mostly national news. The weather hasn't been too cooperative here locally, so our high school teams are having a tough time getting their seasons underway. So let's talk a little bit about college basketball, guys. NCAA tournaments come to a close in very different endings. North Carolina loses a heartbreaker to Villanova on that great shot by, what was his name, Chris Jenkins. On Monday night, and then Tuesday, UConn just annihilates another team, which they seem to have a tendency to do. They're just simply so much better than everyone else in the women's game right now that it's pretty much ridiculous. So the great debate continues with that. Let's start there. Is UConn's dominance in the women's game, is it bad for the game?
Yeah, well, we talked about this a little bit last week. I don't, necessarily mean this, but the other teams need to raise their level, but at the same time, it's, when going in, that's what was going to happen. I think last week, I pointed out their first three games, they won by 51, 40, and 50 in the NCAA tournament. I mean, they're that much farther ahead than everybody else. And that's just hard to fathom. I think really if they divided their 15-player roster and put 7 on one and 8 on another, I think that
they could play each other
for the championship, possibly.
Well, I think, Brianna Stewart's a difference maker too. There wasn't anyone else in the women's game that's quite like her out there. So you've got the best player, and actually they had, I think, the best 3 players now. They're projecting the first 3 picks in the WNBA draft are all UConn players. So it's neat to watch a team that's that dominant, but it kind of comes down to the preference if you'd rather watch a blowout or a competitive game. And I think most people would rather see competitive basketball out there.
I watched quite a bit of the first half and not very much of the second. And a couple of things were obvious. One is that UConn is incredibly well coached. Incredibly well coached. The Huskies had absolutely no trouble with anything that Syracuse threw at them. Syracuse had made a living off its press. UConn knew exactly where to go with the ball on every possession. They ran transition offense perfectly. They had a couple of easy layups. And so obviously that's coaching. Obviously, to be a good coach, you have to have talent. They have plenty of that, but that talent seems disciplined enough to do what Oregon wants them to do. So right now, as we've discussed any number of times, they're light years ahead. And the question is, what can the rest of the field do to catch up? There's a lot of talk today on talk radio and ESPN about parity at below UConn, and I think that's fair. There are some schools, there were I think 3 new Final Four contestants this time. And at times we've had Notre Dame give UConn a battle. I think Stanford beat them a year ago. Tennessee at once upon a time did. But the problem is not getting that consistent rivalry going that I think helped out the men's game. The example I was thinking of this morning was Magic and Bird back in the 70s. That's where college basketball really seemed to take off after that game. Maybe the women's game needs something like that, and there's no way to predict that. There's no way to fix that, if you will, to make that happen. But perhaps if something of that happens, the women's game will get that sort of boost it really seems to need.
I was working on my soccer story last night after covering a soccer game, and my wife goes, "Hey, Syracuse is on a 17-0 run." And then she paused, but they're still down by 22.
Yeah.
So that was how good it was. I mean, Syracuse had moments last night, but that's what I remember most of it, is that they went on a 17-0 run and we're still down by 22.
When UConn was executing in the first half, I mean, there just wasn't any way to stop them. I mean, they're so crisp and so sharp and so talented, and inside, outside, I mean, you name it, they do it. The interesting thing to me was thinking about it. I don't think the women's game is going to change a lot because UConn is going to continue to recruit the blue chip players, and by and large get 4 years to develop them, or 5 in some cases. So narrowing that gap for the other teams, I think, is more difficult than it is in the men's game.
It might be right now.
Yeah, because look how good Kentucky would be if those players stayed 4 years. You'd have Karl Anthony Towns still in college, guys like that.
I'm going to throw out something very unpopular here, but what if they reduce the amount of scholarships that they could offer for women's, and it's only 12? Now you take away 3 from all the top level things, and now you're spreading out even more parity. And now Ariema, who's going to go out, and every year, if he gets 4 players every year, he's going to get the 4 players he picks. He's not going to go, he's probably not going against, he's getting the best of the best.
Title IX, that'll never happen.
No, that's what I'm saying, I'm throwing out a conflict, you didn't let me finish my point. So, but Title IX will never allow that to happen. But what if they did that? I mean, think about it, now there's three, in the Big Ten alone, there's 14 teams, so let's do it, 42 players that would be spread out to maybe some mid-majors. And, our, UConn's bounced around, what conference they in now, ACC? Big East, are they still in the Big East? Yeah, but anyway, the Big East, whatever it was, when the Big East was 10 or 12 teams, that's, that would have been 36 players out there, that, some of the power conferences. And, maybe that's 36 really good players that are out there.
That would be a good step, and why not bring them in line with the men's number of scholarships? I think they have, 13?
Yeah, maybe that'd be a good number, yeah.
The other thing is, let's play with a 12-inch ball. Why do women's basketball teams or why does the governing body seem to think they need an 11-inch ball to make it easier? You play with a 12-inch ball, and then you have those nights where the shots aren't going in, and maybe that equalizes the game a little bit.
I saw recently there was a big blow up between some of the female stars about them lowering the basket
I don't want to see that happen.
for the women's game. And that was a big blow up just recently. I can't remember the two big names that were going after each other about that, but they were both prominent women's basketball players.
Here's the big number you need to know about women's basketball, that's 62. That's Gino Orio's age. If as time goes on, and we'll see how much enthusiasm he still has for it. He was saying on Dan Patrick today, in his appearance there, that he doesn't really necessarily like the pressure of having to win every year. But that's not going away. He's going to face that every single year, every single game he coaches until he decides to retire. And I'm not trying to push him out the door or anything like that, not that he'd care what I thought. But, he's going to come to a day here sooner or later where he's going to decide, I've done everything I can do, I don't want to do anymore, and that's it. And you have to believe that once he leaves, UConn may not all of a sudden become a 3-22 basketball team, but it's more likely to become
Tennessee.
Yeah.
You look at UCLA post John Wooden, Tennessee after Pat Summitt left, yeah.
John Wooden left at 64, and what, 7 titles in a row or whatever it was?
8 or 9, something like that.
Yeah, and there was talk then that the pressure just finally got to be too much for him to deal with on a regular basis. So there's a lot that goes with that, winning at that high level. Let's turn it over to the men's game a little bit. I mean, that was just a great college basketball game to end what I think by and large was a great season of college basketball.
No question about it, an amazing final minute. Who could have foreseen with 4.7 seconds to go that Marcus Pate's shot would have sent it into overtime? It had overtime written all over it. You had to believe that Carolina was going to be awfully tough to beat in the extra time. And Villanova, to its credit, executed very well. Arch, as we like to call him, for those who can't pronounce his last name, did a nice job getting it to Jenkins, who scored a wide open shot. And then with stuff like this, there's always a debate, was that the greatest game of all time? And I don't know. I mean, there's any number of candidates for that. At the same time, you wouldn't ask for a better final minute of basketball than we saw on Monday night.
That's a great set play they ran there too. And how about Jay Wright? You see his reaction on the sideline. He just says, boom, all right, walks over, acts like he knew it was going in. I mean, is there a more cool, calm, and collected coach out there than him right now?
Look like he aged 20 years in about 5 seconds is what it looked like. I mean, look at this grayish kind of look about him, and it was amazing. Yeah, I don't know if he was cool, stunned, or somewhere in between.
He's got a little bit of that East Coast arrogance, I think, about him too, that he's the greatest and that he expects these things to happen, which is okay. They back it up, no doubt about it. A great basketball game, and it was good to see Marcus Page finish his career with what I thought was just a fantastic game. I mean, he really carried that team on his shoulders a couple times when they were down by 10 and brought them back and over and over again, and he did his state proud.
I'm still trying to figure out how he scored that basket where he got blocked underneath and ended up with the ball and scored a reverse layup sort of there. I don't know how he ended up with the ball after he got blocked, but it was that second half he had was just incredible. He did really put him on his shoulders. And
that was no more amazing than that last three-pointer he made. 5 seconds to go.
Double clutch. I don't know how he stayed in the air that long.
The amazing thing about that was with Page, as good as he was, Carolina's big men by and large disappeared.
They did in the second half. And
it reminded me of the UNI game back in November, which with Kennedy Meeks was a non-factor after the first 5 minutes, and one that I think was Jackson had a pretty good game, but the other one didn't play well at all. They got nothing out of their bench. We saw somewhat of that this time. It's just amazing, the team with that much talent, that much size, can't get more out of those players inside. And Nova deserves some credit too. They played very, very aggressive, sharp defense. The lane seemed clogged a lot of the time, but still, you've got a guy on the bench that's won 2 NCAA titles and has as good a resume as anybody in the game, and he can't figure out how to get these guys going inside.
Yeah, it's Villanova kind of rewrote the script. I mean, they had these undersized guys going up against Bryce Johnson and Kennedy Meeks, and they neutralized them, and then their run as a whole just impressive when you look at beating Kansas. What they did against Oklahoma, I think, might have been even more amazing than what they did in the title game, to blow that team out and shoot over 70% from the field. It's probably going to go down as one of the better NCAA tournament runs in NCAA history, too.
You talk about the last minute, I thought the whole second half was outstanding, because North Carolina seemed in control. They got up about 7 or 9 there, and then what, Villanova goes on like a 13 or 14-0 run, and then they got up by 9. I thought, this game's over. And there was like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes left, and then somehow North Carolina ties it. Comes back, I mean, they were down by 10 with about 5 minutes to go, maybe 6. I might be off my time there. But no, I didn't think North Carolina had a chance. The way Villanova was playing at the time, North Carolina wasn't getting any decent looks at our shots, except for whenever they found Marcus Page.
Yeah, it was good stuff. I mean, it was big shot after big shot and big play after big play at both ends and fun stuff. So it was a good way to wrap up the college basketball season. So we're done with basketball. Or at least with college basketball. Let's talk a little bit of wrestling. Nellie, we've got the Olympic trials in Iowa City this weekend. Give us a little preview of that. What's going to happen down there?
Well, big 2 days. It'll be massive crowds. I was here 4 years ago in advance of the last Summer Olympics, so they're going for Rio here, the road to Rio, and there'll be 16,000, 17,000 fans every night, or both days, Saturday and Sunday. So Saturday we'll open up with freestyle, men's freestyle. That's 65 kilograms, 125 kilograms. The 2 area guys of note, and those that we want to know about is Brett Metcalf. He's the reigning world champion, U.S. champion from Iowa. He'll be wrestling Saturday. And then in the 125, we have Waverly's Eric Thompson will be trying to become an Olympian in the heavyweight field, or the biggest field there. And then the other weight cut, those are the only 2 men's freestyle that day. There's also women's freestyle at 58 kilograms, 63, 69, and Greco-Roman at 59, 66, 85, and 98 kilograms. And I can't convert it to pounds for you. So, but the big day for me is Sunday, when a lot of the area guys, Metcalf's a big name, but on Sunday we have a big one when men's freestyle at 57 kilograms. That's going to be that's going to be a great one. Iowa's Tony Ramos is the reigning U.S. champ. Went to the Worlds last year. He beat Northern Iowa's Joe Cologne to earn that right, and so Joe Cologne's in that field. That's going to be an awesome. That 57 kilogram, that's going to be an awesome field. And then also at 97 kilograms, we're going to have a couple area guys in there. Jake Varner from Iowa State will be, I believe, is in the field. And then we'll have Kyvan Gatson, who beat the reigning world champion, Kyle Snyder, from Ohio State, last year in the NCAA Finals. They'll be in that. And also Blaise Cavell, he qualified this past weekend in the Dome at 125.5, but you're allowed to drop 1 weight class. 97 kilograms, I think, I do know this one is 211 pounds. And Blaise, I talked to him on Monday or Tuesday, and he said he normally walks around at 225, 226, so he was going to cut to 211, and he'll be wrestling. And that's a great story. Here's a guy that got his last NCAA tournament. He was 0-2 as a sophomore, made the round of 12, 1 step from being on the podium as a junior. And then this year, he's a contender to be an All-American, and he comes down with the mumps when there's an outbreak on UNI. And I talked about that story. UNI had a plan. They were going to drive him out, but the NCAA medical director said even if he got there and was symptom-free, they weren't allowing him to wrestle. So he got that, and then he moped around a couple days, and Tolly Thompson, the Panther Wrestling Club head coach, got a call from, hey, the Olympic tryout, last chance qualifiers coming up. Let's get you ready for that. You're still in shape. You can do it. You can win this, and you can wrestle in the Olympic trials. And so came out. He won 3 matches and won the Olympic trials this past Sunday in the Dome, and now he's going to get that second chance.
Okay, questions?
Yes.
Does one wrestler at each weight qualify for the Olympic team, or how does this work?
Yes. Well, this is really where one wrestler qualifies for the Olympic team. But the U.S. is not qualified for all weights, and that's a question I wish I would have wrote down the weights we're not qualified at yet for the Olympics. So you actually, through World Championships and other tournaments, you qualify your weight classes. Like the Pan Am Games, I think was another one we would have qualified a weight class. And I think in the freestyle the freestyle they are qualified in all 6 weight classes. But I am not positive on the women's freestyle and the Greco-Roman.
Now, the second question, would it be possible for a guy to qualify in both freestyle and Greco, and has anybody ever pursued that?
You know what, I think that's possible, and I can't, boy, that's a good question that I can't answer. And I'm gonna be honest, I can't answer. I believe that has happened, but there's typically, that doesn't, because it's so hard now. The Europeans are so good, the Russians are so good, the Iranians are so good. It's hard to do that double and be at an elite level. You hear that all the time at the high school level here in the States, where a guy goes to Fargo Nationals and he wins the Greco title, and then he goes and wins the freestyle title. At the world level, it's nearly impossible. It would be a Herculean feat if somebody could do it.
A Gablean feat.
A Gablean feat. Because there's two really big, different disciplines. A lot of, Greco-Roman's a lot of upper body throws, you get that with freestyle, but they're too big, the disciplines are really different.
All right, let's shift it to baseball. Nick, your Cubbies are off to a good start.
Yeah.
Two good wins on the West Coast against the Angels, who are supposed to be a playoff caliber type team. And the other team that's off to a really good start are the White Sox. Our arch rivals as Twins fans, but they also got two good wins out there against Oakland. So your guys' early thoughts, I guess, on what you've seen from Major League Baseball this week?
The stat that surprised me is the Cubs are 2-0 for the first time since 1995, so they haven't won the first two games of the season in 21 years, which is crazy. I mean, I don't know, it probably doesn't mean a lot, but it's just odd that hasn't happened. And the thing that I kind of really like is, they've got a bunch of young talent. They know they're going to be a good team. And Joe Madden, what he does with the lineup, I think the other day he puts in Scherzer because Villanova won the national championship. He's a Villanova guy, and he hits a home run in last night's game. Stuff like that, and it's crazy. But you've got a manager that's just kind of crazy enough to keep them loose in the clubhouse. They don't feel like they're going to let that pressure get to them, and I think it'll be a good year for the Cubs.
They'll probably win 110 games and then lose in the World Series.
We're before that.
How about you guys? Any thoughts about our favorite teams that aren't doing so well? I mean, the Twins, the Cardinals, the Brewers.
Well, the Twins season almost seems like it hasn't started yet. And I watched the game on Monday, I guess it was, and it was such a elongated, interrupted affair. It didn't really, it felt more like a scrimmage than a ball game.
Yeah, because of rain delays.
Rain delayed, starters had to come out. Tillman was fantastic. I don't know, he might have no-hit the Twins for all we know. But, it came down to the bottom of the ninth, and then Jepson did well, then struggled, and then that was your ball game. It's way too early to write any conclusions about anything, but it's a little bothersome, for instance, that Buxton struck out 3 times, only played great in the field. I think Sano made good contact once, and that was about it. Other than that, Joe Mauer hit the ball well a couple times. I think defensively he played well. Escobar had a good game. A couple of guys in the bullpen. Presley and Trevor May looked really good. Casey Feen, on the other hand, was terrible.
Well,
So
Kevin Jepson looked good for 2 batters.
2 batters, yeah. Unfortunately, he faced 4, but that,
Yeah.
So, I think once the weather gets a little more consistent and they're able to play some more games, we'll know more. But, it wasn't a good start, but it wasn't the end of the world either.
All right. Let's talk a little bit of NBA. We were kicking this around, I guess, before we came up here, but there's a kind of a cool dynamic going on. The Warriors, the Golden State Warriors, have 69 wins. They're trying to get to the NBA record of 72 that the Chicago Bulls own. They have 4 games left, so they need to win them all. 2 of them are against San Antonio, which is not only their arch rival, but also has an outside chance to still, I think, have the best record in the West. They can overtake Golden State. So you got 2 teams here. We know that Spurs traditionally like to rest people, but with that #1 seed at stake, does that change Coach Popovich's strategy a little bit with these 2 games against the Warriors? And on the other side, if you're Steve Kerr, what do you do with your team? Do you rest some guys because the NBA title, the bigger picture, is more important than this record, or do you try to make NBA history?
I think you try to make history. I think you just play it to create a cliche,
One day
at a time, and then hope for the best. I think one concern, with the Warriors would be Curry. He hasn't played all that well at times down the stretch. He was like 7 of 20 from the field. I think the other night he was scoreless in the first half. You could probably rest him and it'd be okay. I think they're deep enough. The Spurs agenda, Lord knows. I'm not sure Popovich even knows.
Right.
I think he would like to prevent the Warriors from getting the record from his heart of hearts. I don't think he would want to concede that to them. And also, they're unbeaten at home this year. For what that's worth, he may want to preserve that record. He's such a smart, clever coach. He'll figure it out. And to me, it would be no great surprise if the Spurs not only came out of the West beating the Warriors, but won the whole thing.
I think where it gets interesting is if the Warriors were to lose a game, then does Kerr rest somebody, or do they try to tie the record at 72? I think that'd be kind of an interesting dilemma there.
Lastly, the local sports community lost a beloved member yesterday with the passing of Murray Weir. I think it's fair to say that he was a remarkable, a man who made a huge impact on the local basketball scene. Sully, you've written a little bit about it and done a little bit of research here to kind of commemorate Murray's life. Share a little bit more about what you put together.
Well, he was a small man in size, but a giant in stature and reputation. Going back to the 40s, he was an all-conference basketball player at Muscatine, an All-American at Iowa, the only Hawkeye to lead the nation in scoring as a senior. Remarkable. If his career had ended when a senior at Iowa, it would have been all remarkable. But he's also a pioneer and early professional basketball player. Came here, became one of the more successful coaches in Iowa high school history, won a state championship, won something like 370 games, then became an AD and had that career for something like 30 years before retiring. And that's only part of the story with him. He was a remarkable personality in his own way, kind of irascible, cantankerous, but I think he cared a lot about the game. He cared a lot about the people around him. He could be incredibly funny when he wanted to. I remember attending a banquet some 20 years ago when the old Big 8 conference went out of business, and he was there with Bob Siddons, another Pat Mitchell was there, all these legends of high school sports, and Murray started telling stories about Bob Siddons, and he said, you know, it used to take Bob Siddons 120 minutes to watch 60 Minutes, or stuff like that. That's the sort of guy he was. We haven't seen a lot of him around here for quite a while because he moved to Texas, but his legend will live. I think his legacy will be incredible, and we will miss him.
Interesting that, you know, I don't know if there's a connection there, but the reason that he came to Waterloo to teach, do you think that had anything to do with his career with the Waterloo NBA franchise?
I think it did. I don't know that I've ever heard anyone say that, but it seems like too much of a coincidence for it to be anything else, because he did finish his pro career with the Waterloo Hawks, who were in not the NBA, but another league at the time. It was sort of an offshoot of the NBA. So I don't know for sure if there was a connection there, but it would certainly seem logical that there was.
And he's unfortunately not going to be around to see the return of professional basketball to the metro area, so that's kind of unfortunate too. But, he will be missed. I mean, one of my favorite figures in the local sports community, the interaction that we had back when I was young in this career, so I'm sure there are a lot of other people that feel the same. So that's about all we've got for now. We're going to keep our fingers crossed for some good weather and let our teams get out and do their thing here this spring. As always, you can stay on top of all the local and area sports action in our print editions or at WCFcourier.com. We'll see you next week.